never too early to be wrong, and I'm wrong a lot. So here are my predictions of the college football season in 2015. I think will make the college football playoff, and I may tell you who I think is going to at least make it to the championship game. So let's start with who I think is going to win the Power 5 conferences. In the ACC, I like Clemson. I think the Clemson Tigers are the best team in the ACC this year. I think Deshaun Watson is going to have a Cam Newton type effect for the Clemson Tigers. Not having a Cam Newton type season, but have that type of effect. When he was healthy and he was playing, Clemson was just a better team overall. Deshaun Watson, the ball just seemed to move better with him. They were able to get the ball down the field. They were able to score points. When he wasn't in the lineup, they didn't have that dynamic at the at the quarterback position of him being able to run the football. So I like Clemson this year as long as Deshaun Watson stays healthy. Now in the Big Ten, Ohio State all the way. I just don't see Michigan State going into Columbus and beating the Buckeyes, and I really think that's what it comes down to, because I don't think there's any team in the Big Ten West that can compete with the Big Ten East. The Big Ten East is completely stacked. You got Michigan over there, you got Michigan State, and you got Ohio State. Michigan State, Ohio State, they're the two best teams in the Big Ten. And I think at the end of the day, Ohio State's offense, just as it did last year in East Lansing, will be enough to take Ohio State over the top. And I think Ohio State will be number one throughout the year. I think they get to the college football playoff easily as the top seed. Now for the Big 12. I like Baylor. I really do like Baylor. I think defensively they can even be better than TCU. But I'm going to go with TCU because the Big 12 is an offensive league, and TCU has 10 returning starters on offense, and they have one of the most explosive offenses in college football, and is led by Trevone Boykin. I think that he will be in New York for the Heisman Trophy ceremony because he's going to be the front runner throughout the year. He's going to have big games. He's going to have big moments. He may not always have 500, 600-yard type passing games, but I think he's going to be a guy that's going to have some big moments. He's got to go on the road to play Kansas State. He's got to go on the road to play Oklahoma. But he does get Baylor at home. I think that's huge. And they also, of course, play Texas at home. That's a big game for TCU because it's Texas. Even though Texas isn't as good as they've been in years, it's still a big game for them. But I like them to get that win. In the Pac-12, I like Oregon to win the Pac-12 just because I'm just used to seeing Oregon win the Pac-12. I think the Pac-12 champion is going to have 2 losses, and that's going to knock them out of the college football playoff. I think in the South, the teams are so evenly matched. You got USC, Arizona State, Arizona. You look at teams you look at those teams, and of course UCLA. They have to improve under head coach Jim Moore Jr., and I think that those 4 teams are going to beat up on each other. So I expect the Pac-12 South champion at least to have 2 losses. Here's what I think about Oregon. Oregon should win the Pac-12 North, but we've seen them over the years lose games they're not supposed to lose. We saw a few years ago they lost at home to USC, costing them a chance to play for the national championship. We've seen them lose to Stanford in a situation where it looked like they were the better team, and it cost them the national championship. I think Stanford is actually better than people think they're going to be. I mean, David Shaw just seems to continue to do what Bill Snyder does for Kansas State, get the most out of the players he has. But I just think Oregon, their system, the way they handle their business, and all of those uniforms, I just like Oregon to win the Pac-12. I think they'll beat USC. I think it's going to be Oregon and USC for the Pac-12 championship. Now to the SEC, and it's been 2 years since the SEC has won the national title, and I think that there's some people kind of really worried about whether the SEC is really as good as they think they are, but I think the SEC is that good. And this year in the East, I like Tennessee. This is one of my bold predictions of the year. I think Tennessee wins the SEC East over Georgia because I really like what Josh Dobbs brings to the table for the Tennessee offense. He's a dynamic quarterback. He can get the ball down the field. I like Tennessee's defensive line. I think they have a very good chance to be as good as any defensive line in the country, and, of course, any good defensive line in the SEC. I like Tennessee to make it out of the East. In the West, I'm not going to be like the media and vote one team winning the conference and the other team winning the division. That was kind of weird how they picked Alabama to win the division but not the SEC title. But I'm going to go with Auburn. I like Jeremy Johnson. I think this guy is going to have a huge year, and I think next year he's going to be the Heisman frontrunner. But this year he'll get to the ceremony, and I think that Auburn, the weapons they have on offense, I don't know if Will Muschamp will have this defense in the top 10 right away, but it's going to be good enough to handle the fact that maybe Auburn will struggle sometimes on offense. But I don't see that happening. I think Auburn is going to have an explosive offense. I think the defense will do just enough to keep Auburn in games, and I think Auburn will be able to outscore their opponents this year. I like them to beat Alabama. I don't know who they're going to lose to, but I do think they will have one loss. I just think a one-loss SEC champion always makes it. So here are my final four. I got Ohio State and Clemson, the number 1 versus number 4 seed. I got them playing in the Orange Bowl this year. And number 2 versus number 3, I got TCU playing Auburn in the Cotton Bowl in Arlington. So those are my 4 teams that I think will make the college football playoff this year. I think the Pac-12 gets left out just simply because I think that the champion of the Pac-12 is going to have 2 losses. And in this new era, even with 4 teams in the playoff, I don't think a team with 2 losses is going to get in unless everyone has at least 1. And I see TCU going undefeated, and I see Ohio State going undefeated. Now, out of those 4 teams, I think the best team actually is Ohio State. But I think it's going to be TCU and Ohio State getting to the national championship. And I just think TCU, I just have a feeling that the Horned Frogs are ready for this moment. I think last year, missing the playoff after coming so close to beating Baylor and not even having a chance. I picked Oklahoma last year after they beat Alabama in the Sugar Bowl, and they finished 8-5. So I don't know how this is going to go with me picking TCU, but I'm going to pick TCU to win the national championship over Ohio State in the national title game in Glendale, Arizona. And I will pick Ezekiel Elliott of Ohio State to win the Heisman Trophy. So I got Ezekiel Elliott winning the Heisman Trophy for Ohio State, but I've got TCU winning the national championship. Go figure.